Hey, welcome back to Auto Transport Intel. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a special live event, NVTA Talks Business Insurance. So we're going to meet members of NVTA. We're also going to get some information on insurance with a question and interview session. We have two parts today. We have an interview session segment with specific questions and answers, and then we have a panel discussion with carriers. So please do feel free, join us in the live chat, say hello, ask your questions. This is different than our normal scheduled program. This is a special event with the NVTA. Join today. GoNVTA.org. GONVTA.org if you're on the podcast. And also, do me a favor. You can, right below this video, there's a share button. Click share. Click copy, grab that YouTube link. We're going to be here for an hour. Part 1, 30 minutes. Part 2, 30 plus minutes. Interview and panel discussion to help you, the carriers, get information, get signed up. And so without any further ado, here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring in Cierra Orlyk. She is the NVTA Customer Experience Manager. Cierra, can you see me and hear me okay?
Hi, Jay. Yeah, I can see you. Can you see me?
I see you. I hear you. Thank you so much for this event today.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
We're very excited to have you here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to bring in Kent Brown. Who is Kent Brown?
Kent Brown is the Senior Vice President and Transportation Practice Leader over at Hylant.
All right, great. So we're going to bring in Kent. And here, I'm going to bring him in now. And once again, while Kent's coming in, so your role at NVTA is you're the Customer Experience Manager.
Yeah, so I'm probably the one, if you have called in before, you've talked to me, I pick up the phone, I help people get information about the program and get people signed up.
Great. Excellent. And Kent, can you see us and hear us okay?
I can.
Great. Kent, will you please say hello to the live audience?
Yeah, hello, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to y'all. I am Kent Brown. I'm with Hylant. Hylant's a national broker that does insurance of all types within all industries. We have practice groups that specialize in specific industries. I run the transportation practice group, which is mostly trucking with a specific dedication to the auto hauling industry.
Wonderful. Okay, and I know I just took that baton, but now I'm handing it back to you, Sierra. I know you've got some questions for Kent. We're all excited that we get to watch you interview Kent. And again, I'm just going to say, please do join the live chat. If you hear a question that you are looking for an answer to, or it's similar to something you've been thinking, please put it in the live chat. If you missed the live show, please put it in the video description below. Sierra, please take it away.
Thanks, Jay. Hi, Kent. How are you?
I'm great.
That's good. So you kind of answered this a little bit, but I want to start with asking what your background is in the vehicle hauling insurance industry.
Well, I've been in the transportation and trucking insurance industry for 20 some years. Have worked with a number of clients who are, including United Road and lots of other smaller ones around the country who specialize in auto hauling. We have a large book of business. We have a team dedicated to the industry and to that specific segment of the industry.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So you have a lot of experience in this section.
I think so.
So with all of that experience, you probably are going to have an answer to this. What would you say is the number one question that you get from carriers about their vehicle hauling insurance?
A, why is it so expensive? And B, why has it been going up so fast over recent years?
And what do you tell them?
Well, I think it's, in short, it's somewhat complicated. It's been a tough road for motor carriers of all sizes, including the guy with one truck and the guy with 5,000 trucks. They've all seen these kinds of increases in some part of their insurance program. But in short, it's due to financial performance within the trucking insurance segment. Losses have, by a significant amount, outpaced premiums. So, insurance companies need to have a loss ratio with expenses included of 100% or less in order to be profitable. And as of 4 years ago, their loss ratio was about 158%. So they started to embark on a raising of rates, 25% or so per year for the last several years. That slowed somewhat, but they're still not in the profitable area just yet.
Okay. So what can a carrier do to keep their rates from rising?
Well, some of it's beyond your control because the risk is spread over the entire industry, not just their specific account. And when I first got into this business, $1 million claim was a really rare bird. Now they're very commonplace, and a lot of that has to do with nuclear verdicts, which we all hear about, where the plaintiff's attorneys have won large payouts for damages on auto liability. And part of that is just the direct cost of medical awards. In other words, it costs more. Those awards are up like 4 times in the last 12 years, where our medical awards are that much higher. And that's just the direct medical expenses for somebody's claim. Some of the costs you cannot control completely on your own. However, insurance companies start with a base rate, and that's for the guy who's perfect. And then they add add-ons to those rates for things such as bad safer scores. Your drivers don't stack up when measured against the industry. Claims. And I will tell you, a big claim is bad, but not nearly as bad as a whole bunch of little ones, because they measure frequency, and that counts against you more than having one big claim in 10 years. So number one, create a safety culture that you believe in and that you promote. Number two, be very, very diligent about your driver hiring practices and driver hiring guidelines. Maintain your equipment well. I mean, there are adders when equipment gets old, so that's part of it as well. And really pay attention to your SMS scores. You want to keep them out of alert status whenever possible. You want to do whatever you have to mitigate those scores and improve those scores if they do get into the alert status stage.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot of good information. I think this will be really helpful for people to know. Why would you say that it is so difficult for carriers to find the insurance coverage they need?
Well, I'll tell you, it starts with the fact that it's not an easy task. You don't just go online, give them your name, number, and so on and so forth, and get a quotation back. It's an effort. It requires the gathering of some information, answering some questions that probably don't make any sense to you as to why they're asking. So in part, the path of least resistance is just to stay with what you had. In many states, insurance carriers have gotten completely out of states. Michigan's a good example. Michigan was a problem state for a long time, and due to their PIP laws, I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on that, but as a result, carriers were pulling out of that state and others. In certain states, it's almost impossible. There's aren't any insurance carriers willing to write in those particular states. But most of it is A, not starting early enough, and B, not maybe understanding the process enough to know that this is going to take some effort.
So you think it might be easier for carriers to just settle instead of putting in more work to get the right coverages that they need?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if whoever their broker is, us or anybody else, or they wait too late into the process. So starting early and just being prepared to deal with all the questions and the gathering of information, I think it will go a long way.
Now, when gathering that information to get a quote, is there anything that affects a carrier's ability to get a quote?
Well, yeah, I mean, the industry has changed in that regard as well. It used to be that there were insurance carriers. So there were insurance carriers who would say, hey, we are not the insurance carrier of first choice. If you've got some claim issues or this kind of issue or that kind of issues, we'll take it. We're just going to charge you more. Those guys seem to have pretty much gone away. I mean, the risk just became not worthwhile to take if there was a carrier who was not operating in a safe manner in their view. And again, I think in the process of gathering information, it can be a little bit ominous feeling when you have to go to your current agent and ask for loss runs. You have to gather your historical information. You have to have MVRs on all your drivers, all those kinds of things. It just makes it difficult. And until all the boxes are checked, we can't get insurance companies to release proposals.
So you kind of briefly touched on this or gave an outline of what a carrier needs to get an insurance quote. Will you give us a little more detail of what a carrier needs to compile in order for Hylant, for example, to get a quote from you guys?
Yeah, and it's no different for any other broker. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes the path of least resistance with certain carriers, Progressive, who tends to be a higher cost and doesn't have the coverages built into their program that an auto hauler requires, they tend to require a little less information. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes the path of least resistance is just go what you got. Mm-hmm. But loss runs for 5 years, and they need to be currently valued. That means they need to be pulled within 60 days of the expiration date. But loss runs are critical. You'll run into people who are not real quick to supply those to you. They come first and foremost from your insurance agent. If they don't, get them to you in a timely fashion, certainly we or you can, as a motor carrier, can appeal directly to the insurance company to get those. Historical information, just how many miles you've driven, how much revenue you've done in the last 5 years, and you expect to do next year. The equipment list part is generally pretty easy. The driver list part is generally pretty easy. If you can pull NVRs, that's preferable as opposed to your agent having to do that. Not that we mind doing it, it's just very limited as to what we as an agent can do with those MVRs. And then your IFTA reports, and that's pretty much the big stroke items that a motor carrier needs to compile.
Okay, thank you. So when a carrier gets all of that compiled and gives it to you, how long would you say is the turnaround time to actually get a quote?
Well, what we can make happen and what we prefer are two different things. I would say a minimum of 2 weeks before expiration, but that's not enough time. That's not enough time to get it to somebody, to have them analyze it, to sign all the forms necessary to get the filings done in a comfortable manner, and to keep your shippers happy or your brokers happy. In other words, they're not going to give you a load for 2,000 miles if your insurance is expiring within a week. So ideally, we like people starting this process 60 days in advance. It's comfortable at 30 days in advance. We need a minimum of 2 weeks after we have all the information compiled in order to produce a proposal. And we like to give the client 2 weeks in order to respond and to accept and bind coverage or to move on.
Okay.
So 60 days in advance. 90 days in advance, start thinking about it. 60 days in advance, start working on gathering information and have the information to us, preferably 30 days in advance.
Okay, that's really good to know. Thank you. Just to backtrack a little bit here, what coverages would you recommend that a carrier has for their company?
Well, that depends. There are certain ones that are absolutely essential and some, required by law. In some cases, that's the auto liability, and then the cargo, and the general liability, which in the case of a trucking operation is not a very expensive coverage, and there's not many cases where it comes into play, but generally it's required by your shippers, and it's a good idea to have. Beyond that, it comes to individual preference and condition, and that would be things such as property. You may or may not have a property exposure. You probably should look at some other coverages, at least consider them, especially these days. And we all hear about cyber cases and ransomware, and it's not the colonial pipelines necessarily they're attacking. They're attacking little companies. They don't ask for $5 million, they ask for $20,000. But cyber is something to consider. Most importantly, however, is to make sure that within your auto liability program, as a car hauler, within your auto liability program and your cargo program, you have the coverages that are very specific to your industry. And if you'd like, I can talk about those very, very quickly.
Go for it.
Okay. On the auto liability side, I live in Florida. And I can tell you, I didn't used to think about this very much 10 years ago when I didn't live in Florida. But where I am, virtually every neighborhood is gated, and it's hardly a day goes by that I don't see a auto hauler truck parked on a busy road where they're unloading a car and driving it to the gates and then driving it into the neighborhood for delivery or for pickup. I would say probably on the order of 98% of the people who have less than 20 power units, motor carriers have less than 20 power units, do not have coverage for driving that car. If the vehicle is not specified on their policy, which is their truck and their trailer, there is no coverage. A lot of people think they have it. A lot of agents think they have it, and they do not. So if you wreck the cargo unit, it's not a big deal. You got cargo coverage for that. If you run over somebody in the neighborhood delivering that car, you generally have no coverage for that. That's an important one to consider. The other ones mostly apply to cargo coverage. They are diminished value, where the value of a vehicle after it's repaired is not what it was prior to the damage occurring. They fix the damage, but the car is not worth as much. And the last one is constructive total loss, where a car has, a manufacturer basically deems that a car should not be put into the stream of commerce, so they want the car destroyed. So those are very specific coverages to the auto hauler industry and important considerations.
Okay, so they're not required ones, but you think that you should definitely consider them?
Absolutely, and these are not. It's like big liability claims. If you're a motor carrier, maybe you haven't had one of those, and so you say, well, why do they charge me so much? I've never had one of those. But they do occur, and you don't always have total control over them. And I will tell you, diminished value claims, constructive total loss claims, and we call it manifested auto claims, where you're driving a cargo unit, are pretty commonplace. And you may not have had one, but they are generally not going to be covered by your insurance company if you don't have those coverages included in your policy.
Now, what about occupational accident insurance and workers' comp? Is that something to consider? And what's the difference between them?
Well, workers' comp, in many cases, you're required by law to carry it. And that is the sole source remedy for workplace-related injuries. So if you've got employees, there are certain states, certain conditions where you wouldn't be required to have workers' comp. But generally, if you have employees, you are required to have a workers' comp policy. If in the case of, like, for instance, the most, and workers' comp is state by state, and it's generally fairly generous in the coverages. An option to that, where you have owner-operators, or where you are a sole proprietor, you have a truck, or you're an LLC and you own a truck and you drive the truck, One option is to go without any coverage. And that's probably something that a lot of people do. However, just like in auto liability insurance, workers' comp rates for truck drivers are among the highest of any workers' comp rates. And the reason is because there are lots of claims. So if you choose to go without coverage and you are hurt and you are down for a while, you obviously it's going to cause big problems. One option there is occupational accident, which is much lower in cost compared to workers' comp, and it provides not only medical benefit but also disability benefit. So it pays you disability while you're out of work.
That's interesting. Why is it so much lower in cost if it's kind of similar?
Because it's not a state-by-state regulated product. It is a defined benefit, and it's the same in California as it is in New York, as it is in Florida, as it is in Ohio.
Okay.
So it's a defined benefit. There's a limit to it. It's not an endless blank check. It defines what the benefits are, and they are the same from state to state.
All right. Thank you for that in-depth explanation. I'm learning stuff too. I mean, I'm sure the people watching this are learning something, but I am too. So what would you say are the most common mistakes when a carrier is purchasing insurance?
Well, I'll start with some. I would say, first and foremost, they wait too long. It just really limits what an insurance agent or broker can get accomplished. So again, I would say start thinking about it either with your agent or with however you conduct your search 90 days out, and be preparing the information 60 days out so that you can get it to whoever's doing the marketing as quickly as possible. Secondly, like I said, is I think a mistake is just sticking with the path of least resistance, just going with what you got because it's easier. And then I think we all understand, I certainly understand, that motor carriers, their insurance spend is a huge portion of their revenue, of their sales. And so therefore, cost has to be the number one factor. We totally get that. But in analyzing the cost, and certainly we shoot to be lower cost than anybody else, just straight up. But in analyzing that cost, analyze the coverages, such as the ones that are specific to auto haulers, but also the services that your agent or broker, the services and the expertise that your agent or broker is able to provide, and not just place the order with whoever is the lowest with not giving that any consideration. That is a big factor, especially in the trucking industry where insurance is a different language than it is in the general lines insurance business.
Would you say it's worth putting in the little bit of extra time to find a company and a coverage that really fits what you need as a vehicle hauler?
I do. And I think it gets easier over time. So for instance, the first year you go about it in this manner, it's probably going to be, I won't say painful, but a little more difficult. But basically from that point on, you're just updating the information that you've put together in the past. And at that point, it becomes an easier task. And, some people choose to go to multiple agents and see what those people can come up with. In other cases, people choose, say, this is my guy, this is my agent, this is my broker, and I want him to shop the marketplace. I think, and I'm not trying to convince anybody how to run their process, but for the most part, all agents and brokers have access to the same insurance companies. And so in many cases, you're going to get your best deal by having somebody who the insurance companies know kind of controls the situation, where one guy can leverage insurance companies against each other.
Okay, that's interesting. When a carrier is compiling all of this information to get a quote, do you help them throughout that process?
we are happy to do so. And, you know, sometimes we have somebody interested and we say, here's the information, a checklist of all the information we need. And some of them it's, you know, not a big deal, not a daunting task. Some of them we lose track of just because there's so much required of them. And in those cases, what we like to have them do is to say, hey, can you help me with this? And A, we can either walk them through all the steps, or B, we can actually go to the insurance company with their permission and request it's a little more complicated if we're not the agent to get loss runs, for instance. We have to get permission from the motor carrier to request the loss runs, but we can request the loss runs for them and do those kinds of things and help in that way. Sometimes I would say we like to walk the motor carrier through the application process as opposed to just sending them an application with a couple hundred questions and saying, send it back to us when you're done. We kind of like to walk through it. I mean, some stuff's easy, your name, right? But some of it is a little more complicated, and we like to be on the phone with them more face-to-face whenever possible to sit down and walk through the applications. So yes, it's pretty commonplace for us to get involved in that process.
That's great to hear. I'm sure that's very comforting for carriers too, to know that they're not alone in compiling all of this information they might not have heard of before.
Yeah, we just don't like them to say, I'm not doing this, I quit.
Yeah.
So they stick with what they got or whatever. And we also, I want to add this, we also would do our best. It's not always possible to do our best, but get proposals to people early. And one of the big complaints we hear is that, you know, I hear from my agent about 2 days before expiration, and he sends me, here's how much it's going to be, and here's where to send the check. We'd like to be a little bit more involved in the process and a little more in advisory capacity as opposed to just delivering the news.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's great that you're there for them like that. So we have covered a lot relating to business insurance. Is there anything that you feel that we have left out that you want to share? Any final thoughts?
I can't think of anything. And once again, I just want to say I appreciate everybody who's watching this and everybody who's participating in this. It's a great opportunity.
Thank you, Kent. I extend the same gratitude. I'm very thankful to be here. Thankful I got to talk to you, Kent. Thank you, Jay, for having us.
Thank you very much. That was really informative. Saw a couple questions in the live chat, too. I want to go ahead and see if I can bring that up. Question about loss runs. Kent, can you elaborate on what loss runs means?
Well, they're just a detailed explanation. They look different from every insurance company. They all have their own ways of reporting them, but basically it's a document that shows the date and the place and a description of a loss that occurred that they had to pay on and an amount. And it shows reserved losses, which count the same as when they've actually written the check. You might have a lawsuit today that nothing's actually paid on for 2-3 years until court cases settle out and there's a reserve set up, and those count for the same amount of money or same amount in the calculation as a paid loss. So all carriers do them. They're required to do them, and they show, they allow a carrier to a new insurance carrier or the incumbent to determine what the loss ratio is for your account at various pricing. And they update. So if we ask for loss runs today from your insurance carrier, it could be for 4 or 5 years ago. But they are still currently valued, which shows to an insurance carrier looking at them that no losses have later on been reported. So that's when we say 60 days, the date has to be 60 days prior to renewal that we have those loss runs, updated loss runs from that date. They will show by line of coverage. They will break it down by auto liability, by auto physical damage, by cargo, by general liability, and it may be different companies on all those lines of coverage, or maybe one, but we'll have them for all lines of coverage.
Eddie, I just want to show this in the live chat. Eddie says, awesome information. Great job. And
wow.
Yeah, this has really been great. So here's what we're going to do. Sierra, if you want to, we're going to bring in Michael. Michael Riley is the NVTA Program Manager, and we're going to bring him in, and that'd be my job. Here we go. Okay, well, I'm bringing him in, and Sierra, what are we going to do next?
So I'm going to pass it off to Michael, and Michael is going to sit down and have a discussion with some carriers about their real life experiences with getting business insurance.
Yes. Thank you, Sierra, and thank you, Kent. That was a lot of great information you guys just went over. Really informative, so appreciate it. But yes, so my name is Michael Riley. I have been with NVTA now for about a year since we started, but I have about 10 years in experience in the auto hauling industry. And today we would like to have a panel discussion with 4 different carriers to kind of get some real life experiences and stories from them, and some ideas of how they go about handling their insurance.
Okay, perfect. So I'm bringing them in now, and Sierra, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much. Great job with interview with Kent. It was great information. Now we're going to move into the carrier panel discussion. So everybody, thanks, Sierra. And Sierra, we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
All right, and so while we're queuing up here, we're getting settled in, we're getting dialed in. If you still hear the YouTube show behind you, go ahead and mute that, and you can mute your microphone if you're waiting, and you can turn on your camera. And it's interesting, we go to camera 1 over here. So, right, so this is, we're putting this, we're live, right? We're live right now. You can jump in the live chat. You can ask a question. If you missed the live show, put it in the comments below. Please do remember to like and share. And I'm gonna post this up here again. You can join today. Go nvta.org. Find out more information on the website, on social media, and get answers to your questions. Again, I'm Jay, your host. You're watching Auto Transport Intel. We're going into part 2, which is the panel discussion with Michael and Kent and 4 carriers. So, Michael, I'm going to hand it back to you if you want to say hello to the carriers and take it away.
All right, thank you, Jay. Hello, everyone. Why don't we start off by we'll have each of you introduce yourselves and maybe tell us a little bit about your company. So, Natalya, would you like to?
Sure. I'm Natalya. We are from Clayton, Washington, with the lead auto carriers. We've been in business a little bit over 13 years in the car hauling business.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Robert, how about you? Would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Robert Gould. I own R&J Transport, and we've been in business since 2004.
Awesome. Thank you. Bernard, how about you?
Bernard, Dani Transport, and our mother company is Gloham Corporation. We've been in the car hauling industry about 14 years now.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, Jonathon, would you like to introduce yourself and your company?
Yes, so my name is Jonathon Johnston. I own and operate Johnston RV Transport. We are primarily an auto hauler company with 5 trucks out of there. I've been in business for about 4 years.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all. So to get started, if you don't mind, I'd like to each of you to take a minute to share with us some of the ups and downs that you've been through with your own business insurance over the last 3 to 5 years, just the different challenges you guys have seen. Whoever would like to go first.
Well, I think the most important challenge is the cost of the insurance, and it just keeps rising. I think that's one, that one is a difficult one.
Understood. Yeah.
That's one for me. Another is getting onto another company is almost impossible, just like Kent was talking about earlier. My companies always seem to lock you down to literally the week of your renewal, and you don't have time to shop it around. So that's another one that I've had a lot of problem with.
Right. Understandable.
I've had similar issues with the time frame. I have my data to my previous insurance company 60 days prior, and I didn't get a quote until 7 to 10 days prior, and right away had to make payment. It was a bit of a struggle there. But another struggle I have is actually mid-year changes. When you make mid-year changes, the simplicity of that process. Sometimes it's you got to make big down payments on that even, and then it's just kind of a complicated process on the mid-year changes. That's something that I'd like to be addressed.
Understood. Definitely. Bernard, anything about from you?
It just primarily the process again on renewals. I've asked brokers for loss runs, and it's like it's almost, you've been with them so many years, they're almost like, well, why do you want to leave? Well, they obviously want to leave because you're getting your loss runs, and then all of a sudden that becomes an issue. I've had one broker over the years got a little bit upset because I'd been with them so long, but at the same time, price is important, but it's not always about price. It's customer service as well. Sometimes we need a cert to move a specific car or something like that, and you got a 2-3 day delay to get a cert. I mean, that makes it a little bit hard to make the wheels turn, But primarily, to me, it's customer service. Price is a huge factor, but I biggest thing is just customer service from these brokers.
Well, if you get it, I'd like to address Jonathan's point, and just for what it's worth, in general, that is a problem in specified unit policies, which is anybody like I said, anybody probably less than 15 units and mostly less than 20 units. You're on a specified unit, so you add a unit, you take a unit off. You really have to have your agent stay on top of that process of making sure that gets processed immediately, because it may sound like a great idea. You don't get a bill for 6 months that it takes them to process it, but then it can't be added to the financing agreement, and you get a bill for a large amount all at one time. So that's something that we have learned to concentrate on, and no matter who your agent is, they need to concentrate on making sure, like daily, if at least weekly, where's my endorsement adding or deleting this vehicle?
Thank you all. All right, so moving on. So are any of you doing anything differently now than maybe you have in the past to help mitigate your insurance costs? Whoever would like to go first.
Well, one of the things that I've done is all of my drivers, really a big deal is CDL qualifications, making sure their CDLs remain active. That's one of the things I try to do now is once every month or so, I'll go in and actually check and see the status of everybody's driver's license, because sometimes things pop up on people's driver's license that was unexpected, and their driver's license all of a sudden deactivated. They don't even know about it because they're out on the road for weeks on end. They don't get notifications in the mail very easily. So that's one of the things that I think we got caught several times actually in the last 2 or 3 years with just a driver's license to be inactive.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a good advice there.
And depending on your size, if you've got multiple drivers and all that sort of thing, there are services. The one that comes to mind, they may have changed their name, but I can look at it, I can respond back to people, is Visualo. Well, they'll send you pings if there's been any change in status on a CDL. They'll also score your drivers so you can see where they fit into the spectrum of good, bad, or indifferent.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else doing anything differently than you in the past to help mitigate the insurance costs?
Everything's the same, but I do agree with Jonathan. It's important to look at the license. We had that issue before.
Okay. Great.
sometimes it's not as easy to make changes just by upping the price, or because there's always somebody that can do it cheaper. You know, I'm just a small carrier with 2 trucks, so I can't just up my prices like crazy and hope that somebody pays me just because they like me better than the other person. Eventually, you price yourself out. But just being 2 trucks, we just have to work harder and work longer and just pay it.
Understood. Yeah. Great. All right, moving on. If one of your fellow carriers were to ask you for advice about business insurance and, you know, different tactics, what advice would you guys give?
One of the advice that I had to deal with, and I would pass on, to make sure that customers approve the insurance carrier, because sometimes customers don't want to take that insurance carrier. So you have to look closely to that.
Right. Great. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other advice to give to carriers out there that may be watching?
I would tell them, don't stop looking. If you're not happy with your insurance carrier and your broker is making you feel like they're holding you hostage, if they're giving you any kind of hard time at all, there's probably a reason. And you need to keep pushing to get what you want. As I've learned, I just moved from New York to Florida, and getting an agent that knew what total loss was and all that stuff, diminished value, it's been really, really difficult to find. And, you know, I'm just signing up with Hylant, but they understand what we're doing and what we're going through. And they let me run my business is what it sounds like they're going to let me do. Instead of the insurance company running my business, they're kind of letting me run it, which is something I haven't experienced in a couple, 3 years.
That's awesome.
That is that's very interesting, because my experience is very similar. I started off with just a local State Farm type of insurance company that sold me a commercial policy. And then the next year or so, I worked with them, and they did, you know, their best they could. But when I asked them specific questions about my industry, they didn't really have an idea. So I found a company that did trucking, and now I'm actually tied in with a company that does auto hauling as a specialty. So that really helps me out to make sure that I'm fully protected.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. So one thing that we have heard from carriers is that it can be difficult to gather the documentation to get an insurance quote that meets the requirements for, you know, whatever state they are operating in. It sounds like maybe some of you have experienced those challenges already, and maybe you could go into detail or share your experiences with us.
I think
I actually, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Jonathan.
One of the things that when I first got started, I was able to connect up with a really great company that actually helped me get set up in all my paperwork, as far as my, you know, my audit. I've got my driver list, my equipment list, my accident file, my IFTA file, all of these files that we use and have on a daily basis. So all of my data, when the insurance company asks for it now, you know, I can pretty much gather it within an hour. You know, it takes me a little bit of time, but I can gather all the information together and put it together and send it in an email, and it's pretty straightforward, so long as I keep up with it regularly. That's when I first got.
Awesome.
They help me out quite a bit. So.
Great, thank you. Anybody else, any other experiences or challenges you faced when it comes to getting documentation?
Yeah, putting Hylant on a pedestal, I would do that. Being as I think broker relationship with the carrier and the broker, that's huge. Brokers doing what they say that they're going to do. And then the next thing is overselling you insurance. Some things you just don't need. I remember I kept a garage policy for years. And when I got on with Hylant, they're like, you don't need that. You need this, you need that. So having a program that's catered around our specific industry is huge. Being able to get Kent Brown on on his cell phone at any time is huge too. It's just, whatever you need is there. If he's not available, he's able to get the people to get you what you need. But that's a major industry in a small company like ours, where we're focused on picking up cars and moving forward and getting these drivers to load cars, not really worried about insurance issues, where Hylant has really taken a lot of that role and allows you they do it for you. And
I appreciate that, Bernard. I do want to say that whenever that first go around with anybody is occurring, and I send them, they say, hey, send me a list of what I need to send you to get a proposal. And I almost want to apologize when I'm sending it, because it looks like a long list of information. And almost never does anyone have it all at their disposal. Jonathon, kudos to you, man, for being well, everybody on this call knows their stuff about their company. That's not always the case, number one. And number two, after the first time, like Jonathon was saying, it's just a matter of keeping it up to date. So at that point, we're just revising the loss runs and revising historical to move 1 year out and a new year in. So it becomes a lot easier process in the future after that first go around.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so next question. What would you guys say is like a rule of thumb that you use when you're considering switching providers to a different insurance, carrier? What are some of the factors you consider? Is there a certain, percentage that you like? I must save X amount of dollars, or I must save X percent of dollars. Like, is there other factors that you might consider?
There's definitely, you need to have some kind of guidelines to switch the insurance. For example, it has to be at least $200 less per driver. And, but the main thing, just to keep all the requirements that you need for your company.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Anybody else? Any other?
I agree with her. The price is the biggest thing. So any price cut that you can get is going to help you, right? But as they talked about on the YouTube show, was we have to be covered. I drive those cars into people's houses, and I go in and get them and drive them back out. And now I'm covered, and I don't think I ever have been in my entire life, and now I am. And just like to work for these bigger companies, you need to construct a total loss and a diminished value. And we have all of that now wrapped in together. So is it price? Yeah, price is huge, but also we have to be completely covered for that one time if something does happen.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I guess to kind of wrap things up and maybe some final thoughts, is there anything else that maybe you guys want to share that we haven't covered already, that, any advice, last minute advice you give carriers watching?
There is one advice that insurance company has to have authorization to write the policy in your state, because if your state does not approve the insurance company, then you cannot get certain permits to run your company in that state. So I think that's the big one.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any last closing comments or thoughts?
My advice would be that if your insurance company is holding you hostage and they are pushing their will on you, then I would say get out at all costs. Don't stop looking until you find what you get. And that's the only way you're going to be successful.
Great. All right. Well, if nobody else has anything, I appreciate everybody joining and being a part of this. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And I know at NVTA, we really always like to hear from carriers, get their feedback, and we're always trying to improve and do better and provide better services to you guys. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michael. I just want to mention once again, while I've got you here, if you are interested in learning more and joining, go nvta.org, gonvta.org. That is the website. And I'm also going to put a copy of that in the live chat. And I want to thank you, Michael and Kent and Carriers and also Sierra. This was really informational. I was thinking it's got to be a challenge to organize all your information, documentation out on the road. Is that a big challenge? Being a mobile business, right? And you've got so much information to continue to update and manage.
You need a really good wife.
Right.
I have to agree with that. You have to have a good assistant.
Right? And maybe that's why we oftentimes see this is such a family business. Somebody you can trust and count on to help you. And so it's really, really great to meet you all and talk with you. And so unless there's anything else, I think we're going to call this a wrap. Anybody have anything else to add?
Thanks.
Okay. Great. Thank you all very much. It was really informative and special, and I thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much. I'm going to let the panel go. We're going to go back to camera one, and and thank you for joining the live chat. Again, if you've got a question and you just can't formulate it right now, you just can't put the words together, you can always access this video later. It's on Auto Transport Intel, and again, go nvta.org. On the site, I think my audio dropped out there for a second. I'm not sure, but I do want to share it one more time. Thank you so much. Join today, National Vehicle Transporters Alliance. Go nvta.org. And again, and thank you, Cornell, and everyone that was in the live chat, Carlos, and the community. As you can see, we have a community building here on Auto Transport Intel. We appreciate you for tuning in today. Thank you so much for your time. Let us know if you have any questions, if we can help. Other than that, we'll see you again soon. Auto Transport Intel is live 4 times a week. Thank you so much, NVTA, for this special event. Take care, and we'll see you soon.